Okay, we resume our series of selections from the HaChaim HaKadosh on Parshas HaShavua, and it's all for zchut, for Rafua Shlema, for Ariella, Rina, Bas, Esther, Betושח, Rafua Shlema, for Snap's Guf, Tekefu Miyad. So the HaChaim continues on his third shot on what it means in the order of Me'artzecha, U'moladcha, U'besavicha. So yesterday we tackled Me'artzecha, and we showed that the HaChaim, he says, and we showed from Halacha L'Masa that when things are bad in a country, in a province, there's no good economy, or it's unsafe, or it's an evil place that doesn't let you do mitzvahs, right? Relocating is not, it's above and beyond hishtadlus to improve your situation. It is considered in the eyes of the Torah, the remedy. It's not even hishtadlus that maybe you'll be zocha, that things will get better. It is considered to be the remedy, and since it's considered to be the remedy, it's what you're mamish chayav to do. You could always daven. Daven is good, but you could, if you refuse to actually take the step of leaving town when that is the remedy, so you could be tzorek ve'eno nana. All right, God forbid you daven and you're not answered. So it's it's not even hishtadlus. It is the expected remedy that the Torah obligates you to take. And that's what Me'artzecha refers to. Now, U'mimoladtecha, it says the HaChaim is, ranking, it up and saying that Kosh was making an even greater demand as far as where Abraham Avinu has to choose to live. So first of all, he's got to choose to change his country. If a country is rotten, in the ways that we described, bad economy or hazardous, or over there they've made keeping Torah mitzvahs illegal, gotta leave, right? So that's me'artzecha. But then umimoladtecha is to tighten it more, that even when you go to Eretz Yisrael, you're going to change countries. So you should know when you go over there, you got to choose a neighborhood that's not going to be similar to the way you grew up. So you could go to a country where the economy is good, it's safe, there's no laws against keeping Torah mitzvahs. Right, so it's a much better country, but you have to be careful about the community that you choose to live in within that country. Right, that over there you have to make sure that the culture, the neighborhood that you'll be settling in, right, will be a neighborhood that's not similar to the neighborhood you grew up in. All right, so Kosh was like, as a tightening it, he's tightening the circles. First, he'll change countries. Now, even make sure that in Eretz Yisrael, you're going to choose a neighborhood and a community that's not similar to the corrupt environment like the one you grew up in. It should not be dometu mimoladtecha. And he invokes a chazal that it's better to live, in a neighborhood, amongst lions, like wild animals, than to live amongst Rishoyim, lest you be adversely influenced by them, because you have to care about the influence that your neighbors have. So now we demonstrated yesterday that this command Hashem gave him, change your country, is mamish normative halacha. All right, and we brought the Rambam that a person who could, take himself out of a king's province where the king is legislating against keeping Torah and he doesn't, so even though at the time when he actually does anything against Torah, it's oinus, it's not called in a big picture oinus if he could have left that place. Right? So now this idea that also you have to make sure that you're only living where there's good influence on you. Right? Good influence, right? We're not even talking about that it's also to keep Torah mitzvahs. We're talking about that it's perfectly mutter to keep Torah mitzvahs, and the economy is good and it's safe, but the people have bad midas, they have bad hashkafas, right? You must not live amongst them. So it's being said Haravinu as a tzivui, but it is also normative halacha for ever after. It is the Lashon Rambam in Perek Vav of Hilchos Deis, halacha Aleph. Says the Rambam, it's just the way, human nature. A man will be drawn, be influenced in the way he thinks and the way he acts by his friends, right? And, his neighbors, and he will be contributor. So he's going to do like the people, that live amongst him do. It's natural. And therefore, so on the one hand, the positive man should always want to connect himself to tzaddikim and sit by the wise men in order to learn from them, right? And you learn by them, not just what you hear, but what you see, and in general, there's the influence. Always keep far away from Rishoyim, so you should not learn from their bad deeds. That's what Shalom says, that that if you go with the wise men, right, you will become wise. You go with the fools, you'll be like them, right? And then he also brings the positive Moshav Leitzim Lo Yashav. You don't sing Moshav Leitzim. But so if you're living in a province, it just says, their customs are bad, right? Their customs, the way they behave is bad, and they don't go in the straight path. So you have to leave. You have to move, and you have to move to a place where the people that live in that area are tzaddikim, and they go in a good path. They have good midas, and it's a good conduct. Right? And if all the nations that you heard about, they all have bad midas. They all go b'derech lo tova. Well, you see, we're talking about midas. We're talking about mode of conduct. Not even talking about that they legislate against keeping Torah mitzvahs, right? That we dealt with in Hilchos Yesodei Torah, in Hilchos Deis, that they have bad midas, right? Their conduct, their values are corrupt. So if you know that all the countries that you hear about, they're all corrupt, as he says, Kamoshu bismanenu, as it is in our times. Holy, or alternatively, there is a good place to go to where the people there have good midas, and they have good ashkafas, and they're of good conduct, but you can't get there because there's a war going on, so you can't get past where the war is taking place, or because you're sick, you can't make the journey. Yeshev levado yechidi, so you got to live alone. You got to isolate yourself. Right, right. You should, like the Pasuk says, he sits alone and he keeps quiet. So you just isolate yourself and keep a low profile. Separate yourself from your society, even if technically you have to live amongst them. And that's only if you really can't get to a good place, or there is no good place. Now, if people are there so evil, what is there so evil? That they're not going to let you sit alone. They're going to force you to interact with them, right? What do you call it? They cancel you if you don't participate. And if you don't do as they do, right? So go live in a cave, go live in the desert, right? And just do not ever submit to act in a bad manner, in the ways of the sinners, even though we're not talking about sin per se, the ways of sinners and their bad midas. You can't be any part of it. Like the Navi says, I love to live in the desert because all of society is corrupt. All right, so this idea of mimoladcha, don't live in a society that is similar to the way you grow up. So it's actually going in, as far as what HaKadosh was demanding of Avraham Avinu, change country, but changing country is not enough. Change society. When you move to Eretz Yisrael, don't go to some place which is similar to the way you grew up. You have to live amongst tzaddikim. and that's also normative halacha. A person is obligated to move, to live in not just a just society. That's me'artzecha, to live in a just society, but even a society where technically the laws are not, perverted, and they do prosecute crime, right? And they do let you keep Torah mitzvahs, right? And it's also a safe place to live, and it's a prosperous place to live. Even so, after all that, you have to live amongst tzaddikim whose midas are good, whose deis, whose hashkafas are correct, lets you be influenced. And if you don't find it where you're living, and you can't move, you're chayiv to move. That's normative halacha. Okay, so now we come to a part that the HaChaim did not comment on, interestingly enough, and he left us hanging. And but we will try to reason it out ourselves. The base avicha. So now, in the spirit of what we're learning in this third shot, that the Rosh is tightening the circle. First, get out of the country, and then make sure when you get there, so you're going to live amongst tzaddikim, people with good midas, good hashkafas, right? Don't just live anywhere. All right, so we base avicha, we could actually understand this in light of what we had seen previously in HaChaim in the second shot, is that you even have to cut yourself off from your family as per lot. Got to find a way to dump lot, which Avraham Avinu finally did. So Avraham Avinu is getting a further tightening of the circle, right? That even okay, we're going to live amongst tzaddikim, but my whole family together. No, not your whole family together. Even base avicha, you have to even be selective about which family members you're going to allow in your orbit. Right? So instead, that's clearly that is the trajectory, that is the direction of what this third shot is saying. And the HaChaim left it for us to figure out ourselves. That Aru is getting even a further tightening of the circle. Right? That even in your own orbit, family members, not all family members can be in your orbit, right? Because you are moving to a whole new situation, different country, different society, different values, and you're redefining your family. Redefining your family as a Jewish family, so we base avicha. So now here is the tricky point where it's not normative halacha. Right? We have to understand there ain't no raya domila nidon. If talk about me and you, God forbid, it should never happen, that we ever have to cut off family members. You understand? It's not doima. Avraham Avinu is now he's redefining his family as a Jewish family. He's being separated from the rest of humanity, including from a lot of his biological family. He's being separated from them. So of course, in Avraham Avinu's case, it was the thing to do to cut out a lot of his family members from his life, because he and Sarah are about to create the Jewish family, which is going to lead into the Jewish people. So he has to separate himself from all his other family members that are not undergoing this conversion. Okay, so that would not be the normative halacha for me and you, right? Because our family members are all Jewish. And umipsorcha al tisale, right? The Navi says, do not, you're responsible for your relative. You should always have to look after your relatives. You're doing brisk, as much as they were kanoim, but not mishpacha. Mishpacha, I have responsibility towards my mishpacha. Anyone knows brisker culture, knows what I'm talking about. That they're big kanoim, but if one of their own family members were a member of that hashkafa that they ranked against, spoke out against, regarding that individual, he used to always keep quiet. Mishpacha. Right? There are special allegiance to mishpacha. You have achrayus to your mishpacha. Right? So, of course, God forbid, should never happen. You should never have to ever contemplate severing yourself off from mishpacha, but that's something which has to be done with a great deal of das Torah and seichel yashar. It's really not normative halacha. It was for Avraham Avinu, and even Avraham Avinu Mistama would have not done if not for the tzivui al pi hadibur. How do I know? Because this happens again. All right, and next week's Parshas Vayera. So Sarah says you got to throw Yishmael out of the house. You got to throw him out. And Avram al odos beno. He didn't want to do it because of his own son. It's his son. I can't throw out my son. So of course we got to step in and say that Sarah is saying it al pi hadibur. So this is the din of a navi of Elav Tishmon. Right? You have to listen to the Navi to do anything. But even so, even you don't have to come on to Horash Shah, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu explains why this is perfectly just, that Ki beYitzchak Yikare Lecha Zera. Yishmael's not Jewish. Yishmael's not Jewish. So it's not the pshat that he's listening to Sarah Alts Horash Shah, but even though it is true that Shema B'Kola, that her Ruach HaKodesh, she was speaking Ruach HaKodesh, and her Ruach HaKodesh was even bigger than Avraham Avinu's. Right, but it's not midin horas shah that he's listening to Torah Imenu, right? Although one can learn that way, but it's clearly not, as the HaChaim himself over there points out. Barsha explains, listen, Yishmael's not Jewish, right? So so throwing Yishmael out of the house is no different than ditching Lot. Right? You got to get him out. So even though Sarah did speak Baruch HaKodesh, but it's not midin elav tishmon. It's not the right thing to do halachically, because Yishmael is not Jewish. He's not really your son. Only Yitzchak Avinu is called your son. Okay, and I have to just quickly add on, right, that this is the big issue that we're up against right now with the Arab world, that the clarification that Ki beYitzchak Yikra Chazera, only Yitzchak is a hemshech of Avraham Avinu. So only Yitzchak Avinu's children are called Am Yisrael, and therefore Eretz Yisrael only belongs to Yitzchak Avinu. That is the big clarification that needs to be made, that will only be fulfilled at the end of time. And why so much so? So the Maral explains in a sefer called Ner Mitzvah, which is his sefer on Hanukkah. And let me tell you that I have that whole sefer explained, about 18 installments on my website, evanshasiyah.com. It's on the banner over there. Go to evanshasiyah.com, click in Ner Mitzvah. I have the whole sefer. It's a sefer on Hanukkah. Start learning it now. You'll get it done in time for Hanukkah. So the Maral explains in the sefer Ner Mitzvah, where Yishmael gets his koach from? Directly from Avraham Avinu. Why? Because earlier, before he, in this week's Parsha, I mean to say, before he throws him out in Parshas Vayera. In Parshas Vayera, it says, Ki b'yitzchak yikra chazera. But in this week's Parsha, when he is told, Sarah is going to have a kid, all right, so he says, Lu Yishmael yichel lefanecha. It said tomorrow, all of Yishmael's koach comes from that tefillah. Avraham Avinu was mispal for him. Lu Yishmael yichel lefanecha. Those 4 words out of Avraham Avinu's mouth gave the Arabs all the koach that they have. And since it's koach from Avraham Avinu, our father, that's why it's just so hard to shake. And that's why he thinks he has Eretz Yisrael, which was promised to Avraham Avinu. And it's a work till the end of time to finally clarify that despite the fact that Avinu said, Lu Yishmael yichel lefanecha, af al pi kein, only Ki beYitzchak yikra chazera, and may that be clarified, mamish b'mhera b'yameinu, amen. And this is all Lirfua, Ariella, Rína, Bas, Esther, Betושח Yisrael.